So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. Before I introduce my fellow panelists, I'm just going to take a moment to help us all just mindfully arrive in the present moment. So wherever you're seated or standing, I advise not doing this if you're driving or operating machinery or something like that. But if you're able to, just invite you just to join us just in a moment to arrive in the present moment. So you may choose to close your eyes, or you may choose to just have them softly focused in front of you. Find a comfortable position, feet on the floor, hands on your legs, and bring the spine off the back of the chair. Think about the crown of your head lifting up towards the sky. Just find a comfortable, relaxed yet alert position. And then I just want you to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then I invite you to gently rest your attention on your breath. The in-breath, the out-breath, and the space in between. And then when you're ready, just returning your attention back to the room, opening your eyes, maybe taking a stretch. So Razia and Andrew, thank you for joining me today. Let me just advance us onto the next slide here. So yeah, warm welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining from home. Originally this was going to be at our Innovation X event, and we thought it would be nice to still do this and bring it to our customers virtually. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. First question to both of you. Who are you, and why is mindfulness in the workplace important to you? And Razia, over to you first, please.
So thank you, Matt, and pleasure and honor to be here. So you know, and nice to be with Andrew as well. You know, we've known each other for a little while now, and so for me, mindfulness, who I am, I think I'm really passionate about mindfulness because of the personal impact that it had in my life, and it's been a transformative tool for me, if I can say. And so now, so a couple of years ago, I started this movement, or the practice of sharing this with a few colleagues about nearly 6 years ago now, and this has started into a grassroots movement. So, and today, fast forward to today, it's become a full-blown program which is available in 15 languages. And I am really committed to really bring this understanding, or this, you know, in a more practical way to employees at GSK. So this is what a little bit about what I'm doing, but I'll tell you more a little bit. So glad to be here. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Razia. And Andrew, same question to you. Why is mindfulness important in the workplace? And sorry, who are you, and why is mindfulness important in the workplace? Let's do it that way around.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for asking me to be here. And as Razia said, it's just lovely to share this panel with both of you. I've really enjoyed working with you both for some time now. So my name is Andrew McNeil. I'm an author, wrote the book Organisational Mindfulness, and How to Guide. I was a senior leader in the UK civil service for about 20 years, and most recently as a director in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And the reason why I moved into offering mindfulness consultancy and mindfulness training is because about 8 years ago, I found that the pressure of leadership was just not working for me. I wasn't in a great place. So I reached out to a friend of mine who had a mindfulness practice, and perhaps unsurprisingly, he suggested try mindfulness. And so I did, and something clicked. It just made sense to me. So I then kept that very close to my chest for about 4 years, and didn't tell anyone because I thought they'd think I was weird. And then eventually, through a sequence of events, I found that people, far from being weird, when I thinking that I was weird, when I mentioned it, were really interested in what I was talking about. And so I subsequently brought it into my leadership, brought it into the teams that I was leading, and saw a transformative effect. So for me, much like Razia, it's the personal transformative effect of mindfulness and the effect that it's had on my leadership and my teams.
Thank you, Andrew. And yeah, just to briefly introduce myself, I'm an innovation director at SAP, and I'm also a mindfulness teacher and ambassador. And for me, mindfulness in the workplace is simple. It's about helping to improve employee well-being. And we believe at SAP that we benefit when everyone is present, fully present at work and in life. And for me, and a lot of people who know me would have heard me say this before, it's not about just floating away on a cloud and clearing your mind and forgetting about everything. Our program is designed to help improve concentration, compassion, empathy, and help people stay true to themselves. So yeah, the idea of this panel session is just to bring you a little bit more insight and experience on how we've incorporated mindfulness into the workplace, and hopefully give you some inspiration and some help on how you might be able to do the same. So Razia, tell us a little bit more about your mindfulness program at GSK, and why does GSK take mindfulness so seriously, and what are some of the benefits that you're seeing?
So, I mean, GSK is a company of nearly 100,000 employees, and it's a healthcare company that produce, vaccine, medicines, and so healthcare is very important to GSK, and we understand that to be able to be there for our customers, to produce, to create the right product for our health and well-being, our customers, that needs to start at home first. Just like mindfulness is a work that is inside out, and I think what we've realized is, and that's not just with mindfulness, with that, GSK as a company has been bringing health and well-being courses like way back, way 20 years back I'm talking about, and we've had a department that really looked after the health and well-being of employees. And mindfulness is kind of the new baby born of those courses. So so it's part of the health and well-being package, basically. And but what was important with mindfulness was specifically is the reach, that it was able to reach a number of employees, because the way we brought it in. So it's done mainly through like how we're doing it right now with WebEx. So it's an online, but it's live. So I lead those sessions to the global company. So what it brought was, so these have been going on since 2015. So it started just very small, and that movement of bringing it that way grew little by little, and now it's reaching about 8,000 people. Okay, it's still a still number compared to the 100,000s, but it's one of the courses that's mostly attended, and the impact is been huge. So the impact, I use a survey to record, and every time the survey are saying, you know, how like 80 to 90% of attendees are saying how they are feeling much more less stress, more productive, more grounded, and the impact seems to be extending over their day, even just a short half an hour pause in their day. So I think it speaks volumes. And now those sessions have been translated and recorded in 15 different languages. So it's been an amazing thing to witness the growth of it, starting really small.
Wow, thanks, Razia. So a truly global scale at GSK. Sounds as though it's grown over the past 5 or so years into a really important offering. Thank you. And Andrew, coming to you, you recently published a book called Organisational Mindfulness, a how-to guide, which I really very much enjoyed reading. Resonated a lot with the journey that we've been through and gave me some new tips and tricks as well. Can you tell us what motivated you to write the book and give us a quick flavour of what it's about?
Absolutely. Thank you, and glad you enjoyed it. Tough gig to follow Razia, to be fair. That's quite a story, isn't it? It's amazing. The reason I wrote the book is quite simply that when I was trying to do what Razia's done in the UK civil service, there wasn't a guide. There wasn't a guidebook. There wasn't a manual. There wasn't a way to do it. And so, as I said, my journey started 8 years ago. I found a personal practice. I developed that for about 4 years. I then went on a senior leadership course called the Major Project Leaders Academy, which is run by Oxford. And there, because it was residential, it was hard to keep myself to myself and stop talking about this stuff because I'm very passionate about it. And people were talking about leadership stress and how do they cope. And I mentioned mindfulness, expecting them to sort of pick up their dinner trays and move to the next table, and they didn't. They bit my arm off wanting to know more about it. So I came in and I shared some books which I'd read, and it continued. And that opened the door for me to realize that this had a place in leadership and a place in organizations. And so when I then had the opportunity to really bring it into a program, my background is major project leadership. What dawned on me is when I said to my boss, in a brave moment, I want this to be a mindful program, she very, very sensibly said to me, what does that mean? And I had to think on my feet, and I kind of knew what it meant, but I hadn't articulated it fully. So that really made me have to come up with a model for what does this really mean, and drawing on a lot of experience about leadership, program management, and other great speakers I had heard about talking about this stuff. What dawned on me was that there were 4 elements that we could really look at in organizations. Being mindful about the vision for what our organization or our program was trying to achieve. Being mindful of the delivery, what are we actually doing? Being mindful of ourselves, which is around personal practice and looking after ourselves, and being mindful of each other, looking at the whole team and keeping an eye out for each other. And this kind of articulated mindfulness in a way that resonated with my leaders and with my peers. And it was from that the whole idea flowed, that in essence, we have loads of stuff in organizational design that is already attempting to achieve something like mindfulness. If you look at a program board, what is it other than an attempt to get a group of people around a table to have a shared awareness of information, of what's going on in that present moment? But most of the people in the program boards that I've attended, or many of them, are on their phone, are worried about emails that have just happened, are worried about the next meeting and aren't fully present. So by small incremental changes, we can make an organization much more awake, much more alert to what's actually happening, and bring in organizational as well as individual mindfulness. And that in turn can help those of us who have a personal mindfulness practice sustain it and enjoy it, and therefore not only survive, but really thrive under pressure in our organization. So that's the common themes throughout the book.
Thank you, Andrew. I love what you said about the small incremental steps that we can make and how we can thrive and survive in organizations. Yeah, thank you for that. it leads me into thinking about what advice and insights you might both have for those that want to get started with mindfulness. We may have people with us that haven't really explored this before, and maybe what advice you might have on a personal and an organizational level. So how do you get started personally, and then how might you start in an organization? Razia, over to you first.
So great question, Matt. So I think from my perspective, I would say from a personal level, you know, give it a try. You know, we have to start somewhere. You know, and so, and for me personally, I think doing it with a teacher, having somebody's hand to hold while I do this, because it can feel daunting. It can feel if we've lived a busy life, and suddenly to like everything else, it might feel difficult at the beginning to actually do this, even a few minutes of quietness alone. So I would say find it. There are lots of teachers, really good mindfulness teachers out there, and okay, at the moment we can't, we can't do it face to face, but I would say even over Zoom, there might be courses, but to actually do it with a teacher, I know there are lots of great apps and books out there, but that's, for me, my recommendation. What I found was when I did it with a teacher that had the other element with awareness or with mindfulness is, we know it's the attitudes. It is a technique, it is a tool, and it is more than that. So for me, it is about the attitude that you cultivate when you start paying attention to your mind, your wandering mind, how you are with it. So that's also part of the training, I would say, the cultivation, not the training, but the cultivation of the attitude. And I find it easier to kind of, to adopt that from the right teacher, so that's one thing. And then as an organizational level, I would say start small, do a lot of pilot and try it out, and listen to the intuition, to the guts. That's what I've done. And it might not be an easy way, but really ourselves, by being present, then you could, I knew what was the next step, and the next step, and the next step. So that's what I would say. Start small, pilot, and then move along as it unfolds.
So get started, start small, just do it. Thank you, Razia.
No problem.
Thank you. And Andrew, your thoughts on personal and organizational level?
So very similar, perhaps unsurprisingly. I think for me, there's something about that wonderful expression, there's no such thing as a bad practice, just a practice that doesn't happen. And there's no such thing as a good practice, just a practice that does happen. And there's something for me about, in our sort of quite competitive sometimes culture, to think that we're going to achieve mindfulness. And there isn't, to my knowledge, a gold medal in mindfulness practice. So this is just something to do, and take one step into it and explore it. It's a wonderful journey. On a corporate level, my suggestion is be brave, and don't be intimidated by your own self-doubt. I was astonished at the way that the senior leaders on this course wanted to know more and were willing to explore this. So don't be intimidated, and be brave, because it can feel countercultural. And the other thing is to be pragmatic. So perhaps not expecting everybody to turn up and sit on a cushion for 20 minutes in the morning. Maybe just tiny steps, incremental steps, to introduce some concepts and ideas.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And thank you, both of you. That really resonates with me. On a personal level, I was really inspired many years ago by a book from Mark Williams and Danny Penman, and it was called A Practical Guide to Finding Peace in a Frantic World. It was kind of an 8-week course in a book, and that I read at a time where I was going through some challenges in life, and it really, really helped me understand my thoughts, feelings, and come back and be a bit more present. And yeah, that certainly helped me, and it's one of those that I recommend to people. And I also understand what you're saying from an organizational perspective. We have been doing this for about 7 or 8 years at SAP now, thanks to Peter Bosterman, our Chief Mindfulness Officer, who established this in a small grassroots style group, as Razia mentioned, and you mentioned as well, Andrew, and found others with the same kind of thoughts, feelings. I always say, find others with hearts like yours, connected with people who were interested in doing this. And then also, I think what we found that's very important is to use business language and context to find the right way of having a dialogue internally, and not being dismissive of the heritage, the culture, the roots of mindfulness from various different aspects, but actually making it accessible to people has been important. So using the right words and the right language. And also, we found a partner to support us, which is Search Inside Yourself, who was a spin-off from Google. And we combine mindfulness and emotional intelligence and neuroscience together. But we very much have taken that on ourselves. So we've created a self-sustaining community of teachers who have day jobs at SAP, like myself, who then take it out to our employees, but with very strong support from our partner, who provides the curriculum and the science and the approach, and keeps us up to date with everything that's happening in the world of mindfulness, and obviously the scientific side, which is just growing exponentially at the moment. And I think the other thing I would say is that I've been involved with both of you in establishing the Mindful Workplace community, and Mindful will show the links for that in just a moment before we finish. But I think it's a great forum for anyone in any workplace, or any practitioner, or anybody that's involved in the field, to connect and to get in touch with each other and understand other people's journeys. I don't think there's one right way here. There's certainly a set of principles that we've all talked about that are in common, but I think that's a great forum for people to connect and learn. So, well, we've covered quite a lot in a short space of time, and I would love to talk for another hour at least, but we can't, unfortunately. So before we go, I would certainly like to just give a moment or two to both of you to reflect a little bit on the current coronavirus challenges that we're having at the time of recording this podcast. And maybe the question I'd like to frame to you is, what's your perspective of hope for the future, for our audience, that you'd like to share? And maybe Razia, I can come to you first.
I know. I think you will be both very familiar with those 4 words, but I really mean it. And these too shall pass. So yes, it is challenging and unprecedented, and I can see the increase of demand at the moment. So, like both of you, I'm sure you've noticed the demand and the support requesting from employees to move through this. So I think more than ever, we are being asked to really come home and to reflect ourselves, and so for me, I would say these too shall pass, and using this period to really practice, to whatever that might look like, whether it is just reflecting and pausing, and so that's what I'm doing personally with my loved ones, and this is the message that I would like people to hear. It's going to be okay.
Thank you, Razia. And Andrew.
Thank you so much, Razia. I loved what you said about coming home. I think there's something very, very powerful about that. I'm going to be thinking about that a lot. For me, without in any way discounting the suffering that people are experiencing, and recognizing the fear that people are feeling and the direct impact of this illness. Two things sort of resonate for me. One is that it is actually forcing many of us to notice where we place our attention, which is mindfulness. We are having to think more carefully about how we're going to spend our time. In the UK, we're limited to one form of exercise per day at the moment, at the time of recording. And so we're having to carefully consider where we're going to use that time, how we're going to use that time. We're having to think perhaps more consciously about what things we can't immediately get from the shops, which is an experience I've not had in my lifetime. And more pertinently, we're having to think about each other. We're having to think carefully and considerately about the people we're sharing our space with, our neighbours. My neighbour has a propensity to do with DIY, which is not great at the moment, but I have to understand and recognise that's his way of coping, you know? And so I have to show him consideration and kindness. And that leads to my second thought of hope, that the most extraordinary thing happened last week, and looks like it's going to happen again this week, that everybody down my street that I could see came out to cheer the NHS, which in the UK is our health service. And the extraordinary amount of consideration and attention that people have given to their community, to their neighbours. We had a leaflet drop in our street with people I've never met before, and I've lived here 20 years. 750,000 people volunteered to support the NHS in the UK in a matter of days. We have become, it appears, through this crisis, more attentive towards our community, more aware of the people who care for us and about each other than I think I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And whilst that, again, does not dismiss or discount the suffering that people are experiencing, it is an enormous thing that we can take forward once this does pass into a new way of considering each other in our communities, nationally and internationally.
Thank you, Andresia. Lovely thoughts, beautiful thoughts, and I'm with you completely. I think this time is showing people their reality, and like you say, it's bringing people closer to who they are, and that can be challenging sometimes. But my message of hope, I think it brings what you've both said. I think it brings an opportunity for compassion into the world. And but when I say compassion, one thing I'm talking to a lot of people about at the moment is, yes, we have to care for others. Yes, we have to volunteer. Yes, of course, we all have to be of service. But actually what I'm trying to encourage everyone to do is to look after themselves as well. So the self-compassion, I think, is really important for people to be aware of. To your point, Andrew, huge suffering happening at the moment. But if you don't look after yourself, and if you don't care for yourself, then it's very challenging then to be of the best service for others. So the phrase I use a lot with people is, you know, put your own oxygen mask on first. You need to make sure that you're doing that to be the best service of others. So yeah, I'm just, before we wrap up, I'm just going to share some links that our audience can take a look at. You should be seeing that on the screen now. So we thank everyone for joining us today. and we hope that you've got some benefit, and we wish you well with your personal practice and with your organizational development. And we encourage you to be the change you want to see in work and in life. And if you want to find out more about what we are doing in our respective organizations, then we will provide the links along with this podcast. But you can take a look at the SAP Global Mindfulness practice, also GSK's Health and Wellbeing practice, which Razia is a part of, and take a look at Lines of Sight, which is Andrew's organization, and also the Mindful Workplace community that we mentioned earlier on. So, and we'll make sure that that's included as part of the podcast. So thank you, Razia and Andrew. Andrew, I'm very grateful for you spending the time, especially during this busy time for you, and for joining us today and sharing with our community and with our customers and partners and colleagues your experiences. I really thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.